Hello everybody, I hope you are having a fantastic day. This is a different kind of video. I thought I would give you a tour of my garage remodel. As you can hear, it's a little echoey in here, but we'll just kind of go around and show you what I did. I would say probably the most obvious thing in here are these two upper shelves. And what I did was attach these things to the wall, and they're actually attached good enough that they stay up fine without any kind of support in the front. What I actually did was put some C-channel metal up in the attic. I'll try to pop up a picture of that stuff. And then actually drop these 1/2-inch bolt rods straight through the ceiling, through the drywall. And then they do add some extra support in the front. Those bolts up at the top there are just kind of for looks. But they come down, they're attached at the top, come down here. And then what I really like about this is that when I was getting these things level, and you can see I grounded here, I'm probably gonna cut it again. I could dial the shelf in to get it level. So every so often where necessary, I can dial in the height of my shelf and make it level. So I'm relatively tall. So one of the nice things is that I actually can reach these things, and these tubs have a little lip on them here, so I can just grab them from the floor, which is kind of nice. And the important thing about that isn't actually how tall I am, but it's how deep the workbench is. And so everything I built, I sort of built with my height in mind, and I'm just right around 6'3", and so with that I can make sure that I could get close enough to the shelf to reach up, and that's gonna be something we're gonna talk about in a minute or two. So up top I have things that I sort of rarely use and things that are bulky. So I have like rarely used Ryobi tools. My labels aren't on here yet. That's definitely gonna happen, but I've got that and jigs and caulk and heat guns. And one thing you may notice is that I built more storage than I'm actually using, and that's on purpose. I'm not trying to be a hoarder and a pack rat, but the vast majority of these tubs under here are actually empty. That does give me enough room that when I bring something home, it doesn't have to sit out here on the shelf. It can go in there. So I've got like some hand tools that I very rarely use that I can just kind of pop under there. I did leave the ends of my workbenches open for things like these sawhorses and these jaw stands and all that kind of stuff, that I could just stick stuff like back there and it could stick up. One thing I didn't build in here on purpose is a lot of wood storage. That's kind of been a problem in my life, was to have so much extra scrap wood that it took up 1/4 of the garage, and it may cost me some money, but it's gonna save me some square footage. So I'm gonna buy the wood for the project. I have a few things here, then plus the laser room that we have has a bunch of extra stuff. So anyway, I don't need a whole lot of wood storage here. Another thing I'm trying to avoid is big tools that sit out on the bench, and I know that makes it look like less of a workshop, and I'll show you. I've got a couple of them that are coming over here, but for the most part I try to avoid having those kind of tools here. I do love these long outlet strips, and I've got them in my office as well. And one of the things I do with these things, kind of funny, but I take them completely apart and Tapcon them to the wall so that I don't have to run weird straps on the outside and all that. And so I try to get the wire roughly tucked up there so that, you know, it comes over here and it's kind of out of the way. I'm also experimenting a little bit with these kind of catch-all baskets, so I don't really have anything in there except this is a second remote to open up the door. But I do have things like this here for my PPE and stuff like that. I've learned that if I don't have this stuff handy, I don't use it. So, you know, I have 2 ear protection on this side, 2 ear protection on that side. My wife actually bought me this really cool 24 pack of these things. So when they get scratched up, I generally like put them out by color. So I put all the green ones out, and they're still actually in good shape, but then I added the orange ones. And so when these start getting scratched out, I'll throw them out and put out the blue ones or whatever, you know, so that I can have fresh ones that I can actually see through, and that means I'll use them. I don't do a ton of mechanic work anymore, but I keep some sockets handy here. I do have more that are in cases and things like that, but this is kind of just my quick access. I'm probably going to move the square. I don't really like it being in the way of the light switch when you're kind of reaching around the corner, so I'm going to move that somewhere else. Over here we've got my Wallow hardware, similar to the one that I have over in the office. These bins, you know, they're all things I got at a yard sale, which is why they're broken. If they're mine, I wouldn't have broken them like that. It's always annoying that they break the big drawers too. But yeah, so I mean, just quick access to stuff. I haven't fully moved in yet, so I don't 100% sure know what's going in all of these drawers, but I've got, you know, basic drywall screws and nuts and stuff like that over here. Paper towel holder here that also has this catch-all. I'm gonna get a separate one for my air stuff, but I've got, you know, for my air chuck, and I also keep my ratchets there. Again, I don't use standard ratchets a ton in here. When I do, I get them out, but you know, just a little catch-all. My wife actually designed this up top. She made a template on the laser, and then I used the template to use the router and just cut these things out, and I freaking love them. And one of the things I love about them is that I can have the battery on the tool while it's stored that way, and I can also look down here and see, in this case there's no bit, but I can see which bit is in all these drills. She's actually out of town and she has a bunch of my drills now, but I've got a ton of these Ryobi drills, and it's really nice to just be able to look up there and say, oh, yep, that's a Torx T25, and just grab the drill that has the right bit in it already. I've tried to make use of my space. Again, I don't use the air compressor a lot. I primarily use it for blowing stuff off, and I need to have my hose hung up. I was just using it for something else. But I've got my air hose rail down low, which I've never done before, and I kind of like it. You see back there, there's a bracket that stops it from hitting the bike, and so it can kind of pivot around the shop. And then I've got the 6-port Ryobi supercharger attached to the wall, which is kind of nice. And then even back here, I hid my drywall T-square. You know, I don't want the drywall T-square to ever be bent, or that really long, like I think 4-foot drill bit. I don't want those things to be bent, but I also don't need access to them every day. Under here is my recumbent trike. It's been a video or two, but you know, with all the sawdust going on here, it's not going to stop the sawdust. I don't love this cover, but I got it from Amazon relatively cheap, and you know, stop chunks of wood from hitting it and stuff like that. Then over here, you can kind of ignore the top for now, but I sort of have just quick access power tools and things that I want to grab just occasionally. So my drills, and I don't use my routers a ton, but they're there. You know, other grinders and stuff like that, Dremels, my big Makita worm drive saw, all that kind of stuff that I can just grab quickly. Then we've got hardware, bulk hardware, so 2.5-inch screws, 2 1/4-inch screws, 1 1/4-inch screws. There's more back there, all that kind of stuff. Another thing I cut down a lot on is the bin O liquids and stuff like that. That used to take up an entire shelf of my office or of my garage, and so I decided to limit it to just whatever fits in these two areas I can keep, otherwise I got to get rid of it. One top tip, and you'll see this here and you'll see it down here, is that I've learned that I put away my tools as often as I can, but I also have learned that it's okay to set the tool on top of the toolbox when you're just in the middle of something. So what I'll do is when I'm cleaning up the garage, I'll just toss the tool on top of it, and I'll go around and get everything. And then when I'm done, I'll stick everything back in the toolbox. I like this one down the bottom here because I can open it while it's still on the shelf. You can't do that as much with the plumbing, and I did an air fitting and I needed some Teflon tape. It'll definitely go back in the box, but I put it over there right away so that I don't forget. So this is my rigid table saw, and I really like this thing. I paid $200 for it at Direct Tools. It's I think it's the 4313, 4312, one of those, but it's kind of a nice mix between your average contractor saw and a cabinet saw. It's got a big cast iron top on it, but it is on wheels so I can move it around. And so because of that, I decided that I was going to base this side of my workshop on the top of this fence. So I wanted to be able to store this thing away, but I also made my bench top and the top of my radial arm saw so that I could lay stuff across it. I should note that most of this shop is built out of reclaimed and repurposed wood. So I mean, you got things here that there's obviously cuts, you know, and this piece of wood, these were shelves, you know, so all my upper shelves and all that stuff, all based on just stuff I pulled out of places. Now the miter saw is actually key. I had my DeWalt 12-inch sliding miter saw, and the problem with that was that it actually required like 44 inches of depth. And when I had 44 inches of workbench, I couldn't reach the top. So if I wanted to do something like this where I had everything all in one line, I wouldn't be able to reach my top shelf. And that was a bit problematic. So what makes this thing so awesome, if you've never seen this, it is one of the coolest things. Instead of having a big arm that sticks out back here, this thing, the saw itself, could actually be all the way up against the wall. And it has this really crazy articulating mount that allows you to have the same depth as the 12-inch sliding miter saw, but it's a 12-inch pivoting miter saw, and it is awesome. I love it, and it's a beautiful saw, and just, yeah, it allows me to have better access to the top of my workshop. I will show you that I mentioned PPE and, you know, things like these push sticks. I mean, having a push stick up here, always knowing where they're at, having a second push stick, you know, stops me from doing something stupid with the table saw. And likewise, back here, we have this thing, and this is called the FastCap. I think it's called the $1 million stick or something, 10 million stick or something like that. And the idea of it is every once in a while you have to cut something really small on the miter saw. And what this allows you to do is to hold down the work. I'm gonna try to one hand this thing. Hold down the work with this thing and put a lot of leverage on it way away from the blade. So I can have my hand on it way away from the blade. And so sometimes you're trying to cut a tiny piece of trim or something and you know it's a bit of a sketchy move. And so it's sort of like a push stick for the miter saw. And I'll tell you one thing, the thing with this is this blade's going back and it does kind of suck things that way. So in the event that you're trying to hold on to something really tiny and it catches, your natural inclination is going to want to go toward the blade. And so this keeps your hand away from the blade. Actually works out perfect. There's a little knob back here and I just sort of grab it, you know, and so I get a nice tight grip of my hand being far away from the blade. And the other reason why I use it is that I always know where it's at because it's always behind the miter saw. Over here we've got some more kind of oddball storage, you know, grinder things and drill bits and wire nuts and stuff like that. Then I've got all these hardware bins. Now some of these were over in my other shop and some of them may go back to the other shop, but eventually I'm gonna get it straight what hardware goes what place, and that'll be really nice. I'll tell you one thing, I paid 10 bucks for these things and I love them because they allow you to just keep all this kind of hardware, I put it backwards, all this kind of hardware organized. So I mean, when I need drywall anchors, I just have all the types of drywall anchors. Let me give you a better look. So I mean, we've got zinc anchors and plastic anchors and those crappy, these kind of plastic anchors and all this stuff just in one place. So when I have to go hang something up, I grab my thing of drywall anchors. If I need a zinc anchor, I've got a zinc anchor. So over here, the grinder and the sander are going to the other side. These things pop up on Facebook Marketplace, especially the Ryobi ones, pop up on Facebook Marketplace for like 25 to 40 bucks all the time. Highly recommend it. I need to put a new disc on there. But, you know, just really handy to have kind of a benchtop sander. Again, I try to avoid stuff like that, but I do love having that on here, and I've got a whole bunch of sandpaper for these things. So it's really nice to just have for quick access. I don't use the grinder very much, and in fact, I've chewed up this one from just putting whatever on there, but I paid 10 bucks for it, so it's kind of handy. So that is kind of an overview of my workshop. It's definitely not done. I need to do all my labels and stuff like that, and I love the fact that everything has a place, you know, so that when I need a tape measure, I know where one is and all that kind of stuff, and so it's kind of practical. Oh, I forgot to show you this. I did do saw blade storage on the side of my saw cart, and this is all the various saw blades. So I've got everything from the 6.5 for the battery operated saw all the way up to the 14 for the metal chop saw, which I guess I should show you that real quick. I'll never end this video, but this thing is actually really handy. This you can catch these at direct tool sometimes for like 99 bucks, but it's a 14-inch metal chop saw, and I've got a Freud blade on there right now. But one of the nice things is these blades are between 5 and 10 bucks depending on the quality you buy. And it's for cutting metal and stuff like that, almost like a miter saw. But the idea is that, you know, a quality grinder blade can be 5 bucks and it's 4 inches. But instead you get this giant 14-inch pizza-sized blade on there. So, I mean, I changed the blade out on this thing like maybe 6 months or something like that, maybe even a year. So, you know, I have it over here. So if I want to cut a quick pole, or I did a threshold or something like that, I'll just come over here and pop it and cut it, and it stops me from using other tools that I probably shouldn't use for cutting metal. So anyway, that is really the end of this video. You know, I want to thank my wife for doing stuff like sorting all my sandpaper by grits and stuff like that, and telling me that this is for the belt sander. You know, just fantastic through this whole process. And so I want to thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.